When it comes to web app and API security, the choice is simple. You can choose Fastly's security solution that teams will actually use in full blocking mode, just like 90% of their customers. Or you can stick with costly options that you probably just turn off. You can get Fastly's all-in-one platform that protects apps everywhere they live, however they're built. Or departments can agree to disagree. You can go to securityweekly.com/Fastly to learn more. Or you can just wish you had. Here's Jacob. He's uploading documents to the cloud and chatting notes to his outside agency partners. This is Zoe. She's rushing to share the customer list with marketing and is sending the latest product roadmap to her mobile device. Which one of them is creating insider risk? They both are. Everyone creates insider risk, sometimes with malicious intent and sometimes just by doing their jobs. Empower productivity and protect your data with Code 42 Insider. Visit securityweekly.com/Code 42 to learn more. Searching for the best way to protect passwords and privileged accounts? Thycotic empowers security and IT operation teams to discover, secure, and manage all types of privileged accounts with the fastest time to value of any privileged access management solution. Get up and running fast with solutions for privileged account discovery, turnkey installation, automation, auditing, and reporting tools with Thycotic's free 30-day trial. Thycotic, the fastest growing PAM provider in the market, available both on-premise and in the cloud. Get started today with a free Thycotic secret server trial at securityweekly.com/Thycotic. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. Security Weekly listeners save $100 on their RSA Conference 2021 All Access Pass. RSA Conference will be a fully virtual experience from May 17th through the 20th. Security Weekly will be live streaming Monday through Thursday in Virtual Broadcast Alley, interviewing some of the top sponsors and speakers for the event. To register using our discount code, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC 2021 and use the code 5U1Cyber. We hope to virtually see you there. If you have a specific guest or topic you'd like us to cover on one of the shows, submit your suggestions for guests by visiting securityweekly.com/guests. Complete the form. We review those on a regular basis. Carlos Morales is the CTO for Neustar's Security Services business unit, responsible for driving technology innovation across Neustar's portfolio of application security, DNS, IP intelligence, and threat data. Carlos joins us today to discuss how applications are your lifeblood in understanding the changing attacks. Carlos, welcome to the show.
Paul, thank you for having me. And nice decoration on your laptop. I love the Vader look.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I had to change from like a stickered up kind of hacker laptop. I wanted a different thing, so I bought the skin, and I'm sticking with that for this laptop. We'll see.
The inner geeks and all of us appreciate it.
That's
especially
right.
Those of us who grew up in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, Star Wars Day was yesterday, right? My kids were excited. It's good stuff. Carlos, tell us a little bit about Neustar and yourself and how you became involved with Neustar.
Sure. So Neustar's had a long history. Actually was spun out of Lockheed Martin back in 1999 when they won a big contract to do local number portability. So, when you move your cell phone from an AT&T to Verizon to T-Mobile, your number can stay the same. That was thanks to a database that Neustar created way back in the day. So that was the basis for the company. And then as the company grew from that, it started diversifying into other areas of data and ultimately security offerings. So really broadened its reach. And today is a quite a large company. We're privately held, but we're quite a large company that provides a wide variety of data services in the risk, communications, marketing area, as well as security services tools that are geared around helping companies protect themselves. I'm particularly involved with the security services part of Neustar. That was really born back in 2006 when Neustar bought Ultra DNS, one of the prominent DNS providers.
Was that Rodney's? Was Rodney the founder?
He was. So Rodney Jaffe was the founder of Ultra DNS and is still a fellow at Neustar today. So he's very active in segments of what we do.
I recognize his work from Conficker.
Okay. Yeah. Rodney's one of the the pillars of our industry right now, and certainly from a DNS perspective, but in general in cybersecurity. He's very well known and has a lot of good ideas and innovations that he's proposed over the years. So he was the driving force behind Ultra DNS, which formed the basis of what Security Services was. And then in 2011, we launched what is now known as the Ultra DDoS service, which is a service based on best-in-breed technologies delivered to customers to protect them against all types of DDoS threats. And from then, we've just expanded into other areas, IP intelligence. We have an Ultra WAF service. We have basically an application security suite that we've been developing, and that's really what Neustar Security Services is about. It's about protecting customers and making sure that their applications stay running in the new online world.
Yeah, and I think you've really hit on some of the key things that maybe some of us don't always immediately go to in terms of application security, right? When we talk application security, we tend to get into code and SDLC, and that's important. But I think we need to sometimes take a step back and realize that DNS, right? Protection from DDoS, having some type of application protection and some threat intelligence data in there is so important, and we shouldn't lose sight of that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of time talking to customers about the concept of threat surface, right? So if you look at it like, if you look at, like, let's say code vulnerability as one aspect of the threat surface for software, clearly, and for applications, clearly that is a potential problem. If you make it, so you make vulnerabilities into it, or you code vulnerabilities into it, then somebody could take advantage of it and take you down or own you or whatnot. However, that's not the extent of the threat surface. There's many ways that applications can be impacted by different threats. There could be anything from infiltrations, like what we just talked about, which is an aspect of the code, but also an aspect of the responsibility of the network that's leading up to the code to protect against. There is denial of service attacks, which are extremely common and can impact the application directly or indirectly. And then there's things like DNS type of attacks, where you render the application unable to talk to the internet because nobody knows, or nobody actually knows what the IP address is behind a name. And if the domain name system is down, then you're not able to resolve that, and you're not able to get to the application. So a lot of different threats. The way I kind of typically explain it in an analogy is I say, well, if you think about the attack surface being an MMA fighter, and what they have to protect, if they only were ever going to be hit in the head, then they would just hold their hands up and protect their head. The problem is, in MMA, they can get kicked in the shins, you can get hit in the body, you can get hit in the head, you can hit torso, all different places. Very similarly, where you look at applications, you have to look at the entire surface over which they can be attacked. And that's really what Neustar's focus is in security services.
It's interesting. I was listening to Joe Rogan just along the lines of your analogy, and there were some MMA fighters that were kicking purposely in the calf, like repeatedly, and just causing like so much damage to people's calves that some were unable to continue in the fight. I feel like that's an extension of that analogy, right? That attackers are going to go for that weakest spot and keep attacking it.
Absolutely. If you have let's say, a DNS provider, or maybe you run your own DNS, and it's not something that you've maybe focused on a lot, or the provider is just doing it. It may be a small ISP that's just doing it as happenstance. Your opportunity to be taken down is so much greater than if you have a service from a reputable DNS company that focuses on reliability and redundancy and strength of network, right? So absolutely, if that happens to be the weak spot, the attackers will surely find it.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I love the leg kick metaphor.
Yeah, great. I mean, you can look that up too. I thought it was, I've done martial arts before. I thought it was really interesting, kind of aspect of fighting, right?
It makes it kind of a boring fight, but it's really effective.
Exactly.
And we see the same kind of stuff in
DNS
cyber.
is kind of the same thing too, right? It's kind of like that boring thing, needs to be there, but it requires attention.
You're not going to see it in a Hollywood movie, but it works, and the bad guys will use it.
Yep.
Well, and the analogy works, I think, because people can relate to MMA or boxing or anything that's physical in nature, right? It's a lot harder to relate to cybersecurity, and they may be most people don't have a notion of what it takes for a computer to actually get to a website somewhere and get the content of the website. They just assume and take it for granted that it will work, right? But there's a lot of components to that that could be exposed. But if you kind of explain in that sense, I think you kind of go over the head of a lot of folks, or maybe it just doesn't resonate with their day-to-day lives. Whereas something like mixed martial arts is something that a lot of people have seen or understand and very, very clearly can relate to.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like we've gone through a distinct progression with DNS, where largely it was something that you built and maintained on your own, and then slowly over time you started relying on different providers. Carlos, can you talk about maybe that progression and why we should go with a trusted provider that provides just an amazing service to help protect our DNS infrastructure versus doing it yourself or just hosting it like wherever?
Sure. I think it's a matter of the reliance on it really has increased so much over the years, right? So, I mean, when DNS was first invented, the internet was young. People were using it, but wasn't part of the fabric of everyday life like it is today, right? So if you look at today, everybody is using apps, whether it's on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer, on your TV, what have you. The apps are running everything. So it really is ingrained in everyday life. So that availability of that application to do whatever you need it to do, whether it's updating your social media or doing some productivity updates in at work, or watching a Zoom video of Security Weekly, people are using apps to go do this stuff. Those apps rely on the DNS system to get to where they're going, right? Because all the computers in the world don't have a notion of where things are automatically. So they use common names like www.securityweekly.com, and then that tells the computer where to go. That thing that tells it where to go is the DNS system. So as we've progressed from the kind of nice to have internet of the 90s and 80s to the absolutely mission critical internet of the 2020, you need to make sure that underlying system that allows any user to get anywhere is super solid, right? Rock solid. That's one factor. The second factor is the number of companies that actually needed to have DNS has expanded greatly, and the amount of expertise that's out there that actually understands it and can run a bind server or run something that a DNS server of any sort is limited. So there was a need for some expertise to come in, and that sort of lent itself towards managed DNS. And that's really where this was birthed from. It was hey, you can go and build it yourself. You go find expertise to go do it, learn about it, and build it. And maybe not you'll be successful. Or you can come to us who handle billions of DNS transactions on a daily basis, have built a network completely robust and fault tolerant that has points of presence all across the globe. And we can give you a nice little GUI that's very easy to use, and you can use it to manage your network. I think the latter is very, very attractive to most companies now.
Yeah, because even if you're not spinning up your own bind server, many of the cloud providers have many different types of DNS services, but that again requires that expertise. And I've got a pretty extensive past with DNS, and I'd have to take some classes and stuff to learn how some providers are implementing DNS specific to their environments.
Absolutely. I mean, the innovations from security, you get something like DNS over TLS, DNS over HTTPS for confidentiality. You obviously have DNSSEC, the sort of the PKI of the DNS world, making sure that the records you're getting are legitimate. All those are complicated additions to the DNS stack. It's not just a simple matter of running. The other factor is really DNS was originally built around trust. Everybody trusted everybody else. So if you went and asked a question of a DNS server, you expected an answer, and that was it. Unfortunately, that trust model can be exploited. And so the DNS system over the years has been exploited from everything from DNS reflection amplification attacks, where you're using it to carry out a DDoS attack, sending traffic to a DNS resolver, asking for an answer to something, but using a source IP address of whoever you want to attack. So the DNS responder responds to them. or using it as a tunneling protocol. So a lot of companies allow DNS in and out of their network, which is natural. So people can actually use it by sending DNS packets or traffic that looks like DNS, but is actually encoded. It's using just DNS top layer over what's actually being transmitted to exfiltrate data or do something like that, or do something else nefarious. So all of those things are just the kind of added complications that I think folks that even if they had a good notion of how to run DNS before, maybe wouldn't be as equipped to doing it now.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Also, there's been an interesting take on DDoS, especially. Does it tie into ransomware and ties into the pandemic as well, right? We've seen some different kind of trends, right?
Yeah, so the pandemic obviously has had a profound effect on everything, and in particular in the world of cybersecurity, what it's done is it's changed that attack surface again. So where the majority of people that were accessing, let's say, corporate applications and services were all resident within branch offices or offices of enterprises. That's no longer the case. All of the folks that are doing this, so the majority of them are now remote. They're looking from consumer networks to run their applications. That's changed a great deal around what could possibly be attacked. So things like VPN services, the ability to get into networks, cloud-based services, and cloud gateways, and SD-WAN or those type of connections, as well as remote voice type of applications, voice over IP, and really any other type of corporate services now have a much broader set of places that can be attacked. So what does that mean for DDoS? It means whereas before companies cared about their website, and maybe certainly if they had a front end store there, they would care about that being attacked. Now they have to care about all of these other discrete components that if they're attacked and taken down, will take down productivity for the company or take down a piece of its reputation,
or take down the call center. I like that example because as we move through the pandemic, you couldn't necessarily have a call center where hundreds of people are going in the same location and answering the phones. Everyone had those VoIP services to do it remotely.
That's exactly right. And we've absolutely seen call centers being targeted. So you have those hundreds of operators are now coming in remotely into the centralized call center application. If that application is taken down, then your hundreds of agents are no longer viable, no longer able to do the whatever their service they're providing. So it is a very big vulnerability that's happening. And how that segues in is criminals recognize that change in attack surface and immediately started taking advantage of it. For instance, on our network, we saw about 150% increase in the number of DDoS attacks year over year from 2019 to 2020. And it really started markedly in March as soon as the shutdown happened. Worldwide, we've seen statistics that say it's close on 25% increase just across the board. We'll see a larger increase because we run a DDoS service, so therefore customers are probably a little bit more susceptible to DDoS to begin with. But either way, we've seen both in market studies as well as our own visibility, we've seen huge increase in the number of attacks. So what's ended up happening is attackers are recognizing that there's a vulnerability, that there's a much larger attack surface, so they're taking advantage of it. And that's really culminated in what you mentioned, which is ransom DDoS. So ransom DDoS is where an attacker will send an attack at a victim. In this case, it's attacks between 10 gigabits per second to 100 gigabits per second, and then send the victim a letter saying, hey, we are so-and-so. If you don't pay us X amount of Bitcoin, we'll attack you 10 times larger next week. So companies then are faced with, do I pay the ransom? Do I go and contract a company? Do I take the chance of being taken down again, potentially? It's a big deal. So starting in August of last year, we've seen a sustained ransom DDoS campaign that's lasted to present, that's targeted hundreds of companies across many verticals, including financials, DNS providers, insurers, shipped it over to healthcare providers, and then finally manufacturers and high-end retailers. And And it really seemed to be that the attackers were taking a list of the Fortune 500 companies in each one of those spaces and hitting all of them, because we saw a breadth of attack that was much greater than anything we've ever seen. And that led to a lot of the increase that I mentioned before.
And Carlos, obviously there's a line in terms of how much detail you could probably disclose about how you deal with and thwart DDoS attacks, right? How do you walk that line? Like, what can you share with our listeners about, maybe how Neustar does it that's differentiated without, obviously you don't want to tell the attackers exactly how it works because they're going to try and find ways to subvert it.
Sure. And this is where I think at a high level, first of all, we use best in breed technology, the best in class. So we look for, we don't have an invented here policy at Neustar. We augment what's available in the market. So whether commercially, open source, what have you, we integrate in with our own know-how to create what we'd call a super stack across all types of threats. And to date, we have the capability of handling any attack that has come our way. So we're extremely successful, and we're handling hundreds of attacks on a weekly basis. So we have a fair amount of experience in it. Techniques, really, well, first of all, there's a lot of push towards automation, AI, ML type of things, and there's certainly that aspect to it. So there's an ability to do statistical as well as behavioral-based pattern understanding and implementing fixes based on, or implement what we call countermeasures based on that. But then there's a whole lot of techniques that are specific to types of attacks that are common in the industry. Everything from simple filtration to man-in-the-middle techniques, where we act as a proxy, if you will, for the traffic and on behalf of the application to make sure that the attacker is real and really a client. To a lot of those MLAI type of techniques. Again, it's a whole set of what we call countermeasures against different types of known threats. I think that's probably as far as I can go in terms of getting into the details.
Yeah, understood. Tyler, Adrian, sorry, do you guys have questions? Oh, Adrian, I think you're on mute, Adrian.
I am sorry.
Oh, and Adrian went on mute again. It's the AI ML in Adrian's audio.
Yeah,
once I've gotten it wrong twice, just go
service attack on a Zoom call.
There you go.
There you go.
Once I've gotten it wrong twice, just go to somebody else. I've totally. And my only comment was just that I thought it was really cool that Neustar has its own TLD.
Yep. So .biz is so yeah, we've been at this for a long time. So
yeah.
Like I went to your website and I was like, wait, www.home.neustar. What?
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
You've been doing DNS that long, right? You know the system, right?
Right. And they manage, I think, .in, .co, .us, and .nyc from what I found.
Among others, yes.
Yeah, that's only a small percentage of the ones that they manage. Neustar's been around forever. They do a whole host of stuff. It's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
Carlos, does it? We're looking at Neustar services. If I'm interested in the DDoS protection, I'd venture to guess that I should also host my DNS there as well, and that's kind of like a bundled service, I'd imagine.
I'd say it's recommendable for sure. They're not sold per se. It's not mandated to be bundled, but it's highly recommended. So if you have potential for being attacked, you want to take a look at your entire attack surface, and DNS is a major component of it. So yes, it would be very recommendable to have DNS in along with DDoS. We do sell them independently, and DNS actually comes in with some amount of DDoS protection, non-SLA type of protection, but we'll handle it if there's a major attack hitting your way. But if you then want to go into really very fast, strong, and reactive, high visibility, high touch capacity, then you have the DDoS offering. So it is highly recommendable you look at both, along with the WAF offering as well.
Yeah, tell us about the WAF offering. How did that come to be?
Sure. I think it's really a natural extension. So one of the things that we've seen as a shift in the DDoS world over the last couple of years is a move towards having always on services for customers. And the whole WAF component is a component of that, which is basically attacks have become more complex continuously. And we've seen a lot more attacks at the application layer, coupled with attacks at volumetric. And what ends up happening, especially with SSL and especially with TLS 1.3, the need to be able to do decryption on those kind of things requires an inline proxy. So to be able to look at and decipher some of these application layer threats, you need to have something that's always on inline and able to look at decryption and do all of those things at the application layer, along with applying all those stateless defenses that would require to handle the big volumetric and state-based attacks. So WAF is just kind of a natural extension. A lot of the WAF functionality is protecting against some of those types of events that would impact the website. It also protects against the OWASP top 10 and all of the natural infiltration attempts. But it's basically application and stateful-based security against attacks that are going to the website, which is highly complementary to the more volumetric-based security, which is kind of what you would traditionally think of with DDoS defenses.
And it sounds like you're protecting some of the larger networks and websites that are out there today. Can you share with us any case studies? I know a lot of it's probably sensitive too, right? I'm sure there's DDoS attacks that happen that we'll never hear about, and you're protecting them, and it's a non-issue, right?
Yeah, and customers are very touchy about having us reveal their names in any way, shape, or form. But I could say from an industry perspective, like for instance, 2 out of the top 5 top retail banks in the U.S. are our customers. So that kind of thing is common. Some of the largest pharmaceutical companies on the planet are customers on the network. Some of the larger insurers across Europe and the U.S. are also customers on the network. So one of the largest data media streaming company is customers on the network, and they all kind of have different factors that brought them in, right? The financials and the insurance companies have been attacked over the years a lot. They were hit hard. Periodically they get hit hard, but they've been hit since kind of the inception of DDoS because they tend to have the best defenses and they have the money, and they have a vested interest in keeping their network up. So a lot of those folks came onto the network early on, and they did so because Neustar really offered a good combination of best-in-class solutions, so cutting-edge technology, but with a real customer service focus, right? So we had and we have a lot more flexibility and a lot more high-touch capabilities than a lot of the competitors in the market, and that's differentiated us for some of these larger customers who require a bit more handholding and a bit more high touch.
When there's an incident, they want to be able to pick up the phone and call and get someone on to help them.
Yeah, I think when you and I spoke before, I kind of made the analogy of one of the things that is upsetting to me about my cell phone company. Every time I need to try to talk to a human, it takes hours to get through call prompts and all this other stuff just to get to somebody who can help me with whatever problem I have, even if I want to buy something.
Right. Isn't that astonishing? Like, I want to give you money. Like, really?
Yeah. It's beyond frustrating. But if you think about what happens if a corporate enterprise is being taken down, their hair is literally on fire. They got to be, and if that DDoS service isn't working exactly right in that moment, then they need to be able to pick up the phone and get somebody on the phone that can help them fix that. So, I mean, that's what we're really all about. Is we're here to back up the solution. We use a huge amount of automation, what I would consider intelligent automation, where we're not trying to make the whole thing humanless. We're trying to make it so that the vast majority of things just get handled and get done. But humans are there to pick up any pieces and to fix things that aren't working exactly as expected, and more importantly, to help our customers through the experience, which is very oftentimes traumatic.
For sure. Yeah, many of us have worked and still work in enterprises today, right? When you understand the hair on fire analogy very well.
Well, when you're asked to go in front of the board to go explain what's going on, and you're trying to get your DDoS service provider to do what they're supposed to be doing, that's a very harrowing situation.
Right. Yeah, and the streaming service analogy I think is important, especially in today's landscape, because connectivity and access. I mean, that is their product, right? Is the ability to stream something. If I can't file a claim for 5 minutes with my insurance provider, that's somewhat acceptable. But like when I want to watch a video, I want to watch a video. You know what I mean? I want to watch a movie.
That's it. And you can say that same thing for gaming providers,
yes.
Whether gambling or online gaming. I'll tell you what, if you just did a big product launch, and you have probably your biggest influx of customers in the year, and you're taken down at that moment in time, that's lights out for everybody, right?
Sometimes they do that to themselves. I know big companies starts with a D, right? Had that issue, which they've largely resolved. And I think as technologists, we're very, empathetic to that situation, but only for so long, I think.
And of course, there is always those situations, but I think the bigger threat always will be the hacker and the DDoS attacks or those kind of things. They happen very, very often, and if you're not really prepared, it can snowball on you.
Yep.
And just actually, that's one thing. Preparation is a huge factor that I failed to mention before. So one of the things I've been promoting for a while that I think is important is whether or not you have a DDoS provider, and especially if you have Neustar as your DDoS provider. Highly encourage you to test it, because frankly, don't expect everything to work absolutely perfectly when there's a bunch of integrated components in whatever solution you have. So you don't want to be trying it out for the first time in a year when you have an actual attack. So I highly encourage tests. It's something that we do here as a routine matter, of course, and offer to our customers. Is the ability to go ahead and do a test. Make sure that the efficacy of the service is exactly what you would expect. Make sure that the call flows are working exactly as you would expect, and your data and your applications flow normally.
And by test, Carlos, you don't mean go hire a DDoS for hire service to test it, because you probably don't want to tread in those waters, right?
Well, funny enough, no. Typically, a test is connectivity. Make sure that you can transfer the traffic over and your applications continue to run normally. It both makes sure that the data path is okay, because there's things like GRE tunnels and other things involved in this that maybe can change over time. So you want to make sure that they're still working well. But yeah, I mean, some companies do opt to go ahead and actually hire not a disreputable. There's a bunch of reputable companies. Yeah, okay. There's kind of pen testing companies that'll do DDoS tests. And usually do that to a test site, not necessarily to your production service. So, your www.whatever.com is not the place you would do testing on.
Awesome. Carlos, anything else you'd like to share with our audience today?
I really appreciate the time and ability to share the kind of a little bit about the attack landscape. I can say that, again, availability of your services and your applications is critical, and that's really what Neustar is all about, is making sure that we're ensuring that in the best way possible with humans behind it. So if anything you remember, please remember that.
Awesome. Carlos, thank you so much. For folks that want to learn more, please visit securityweekly.com/Neustar. Carlos, thanks again.
Thank you very much.
With that, coming up next will be the Enterprise Security News. Stick around.